Hello and welcome to episode 386 of the Mark and Me podcast. As always, I'm your host Mark. Now joining me on today's episode is Paul Smith, the singer of Maxïmo Park. What an incredible band they are, and I'm so glad I get to talk to him in great detail today about the band's brand new album, Stream of Life. This album genuinely is a contender for Album of the Year. I've never been a massive fan of this band. I've been to see them many times. I like a lot of their songs, but I've never been that album guy with them. But when I got the opportunity to sit down and talk to Paul, I spent quite a lot of time going through their back cat, and their most recent album for me, genuinely, is just pure joy. It's so well produced, the harmonies, the vocals, and you'll hear on today's interview just how much I love it and go into it with Paul himself. But, as always, I like to use the intro for each and every episode of Mark and Me to touch base and talk about my last episode. It was out only 2 days ago, and I was joined by Robert Harmon, the film director who gave us the absolutely awesome film, The Hitcher. This episode has done so well, and thank you to all the horror fans, the movie fans out there who have shared this episode and told everyone about it, because I've been blown away by the numbers. But today it's all about Maxïmo Park. This band genuinely will blow you away. Their live performances are absolutely incredible, and Paul is one of the deepest thinkers, one of the easiest people to talk to, and one of the best guests that I've had on Mark and Me. He's so generous with his time, and I can't wait to get to the interview. So I think we should do that right now. So here's me and Paul talking all things Maxïmo Park. So Paul, welcome to the Mark and Me podcast.
Thanks for having us on.
What I love to do with all guests that come on, Paul, is take it right back to the very start. So I've done this for every episode and every guest that's been on. But I'm always intrigued what it was when you were growing up, maybe a first album that was given to you, or maybe you saved up your pocket money. But that first album that you remember buying, that you just became obsessed with, that you fell in love with.
That would have to be Listen Without Prejudice, Volume 1, by George Michael, and
wow,
it's still a brilliant record. I think all these years later, I still listen to it every now and then, even though I totally rinsed it at the time. But I'd heard the singles on the radio, you know, Freedom 90.
Oh,
I was 11 years old or something like that when it came out, and before that, you know, I'd listened to my mum and dad's music. You know, they had the Beatles love songs tape in the car, and so I would I think that's one of the reasons why I learned kind of harmony stuff, just listening to the Beatles and having one harmony coming out of one side of the speaker and another one coming out of the other. And you know, my mum, a lot of the stuff that she had I didn't get into till later. You know, I was into kind of soft rock, really. You know, I just loved putting on the telly, and I used to tape videos off Top of the Pops.
Amazing.
All sorts of different things. Any music thing that was on while I was allowed to be watching it, while I was awake, I would tape, and I would just have tapes of music that I liked. And as I got older, I mean, I would do the same thing for football as well. I would tape all of Middlesbrough's goals and just rewatch them. Because I was a suburban child with nothing to do.
That's cool.
But yeah, the George Michael one, I was like, I couldn't believe how sort of textured it was. I loved his voice, and it seemed like he was so kind of, I mean, again, looking back at it as an adult, you know, it was very kind of earnest in places.
Yeah.
He was really, you know, Praying for Time, the sort of lead single, was a total curveball for people, you know, and then he put out Freedom 90 and everybody was like, it's okay, George still does the pop songs. But that idea of these songs all sitting together, it was the first time I'd heard this Stevie Wonder song, that They Won't Go When I Go, on the record.
Yeah.
And I just love the kind of mixture of sort of quite simplistic drum machines and acoustic guitars and a kind of groove, and just this incredible singer, like a real genuine soul singer. You know, one of the guys, I mean, the fact that he sang with Aretha Franklin always amazed me. It was like Aretha Franklin said, "Yep,
Yeah.
this guy can do it."
I
So
think
yeah.
with George Michael, I came into him a bit late. Like I got into his music later on in life. And as a kid, I know everyone loved Wham, but I wasn't really. I was more into like Nirvana and stuff like that. And I listened to his Unplugged album and watched his MTV set, and I think it's up there with one of the best performances I've ever heard. And his version of "I Can't Make You Love Me"
Oh
is
yeah.
just absolutely unbelievable. And I'd watch it again and again, thinking like, "This is a backing track, like it's flawless."
That's right. Well, this is it. I mean, my friends are in a band called Field Music from Sunderland, and we did some covers just a few years ago. We did a kind of Paul Smith and Friends up here in the Northeast, and one of the songs that we did was "I Knew You Were Waiting" with George and Aretha, and it was just like I just can't. It's almost like his voice was a synthesizer.
Yeah.
You know, the way that he would hit the notes, but again with feeling. You know, again the texture of his voice is so smooth, but it's got a real power to it, and it's something that me and some of my friends who also like George Michael, we often discuss just that. Yeah, the level of kind of perfection that's involved, but there's a kind of soul behind it,
He
which is
also
really
Levin looks like he's struggling. Like even when he went on stage with Queen and the tribute concert and stuff, like the song "Amazing," those lyrics are unbelievable. And when I watch him perform, I feel like he's not even really trying, if that makes sense. Not in a disrespectful way. Like it's just effortless. Like he'll just stand there, his mic technique, and it's just phenomenal. And no one really got in touch with distance of Freddie Mercury. But that performance I watch on YouTube, I'm like, that's Freddie's looking down, saying like, if anyone's going to wear my crown, it's you.
It's kind of it is unreal watching
Yeah,
performances back, and you know the kind of vulnerability that he allowed into his music, despite this kind of clear perfectionist at work. That's the interesting thing. This you know a real very human guy. You know a lot of we ended up hearing a lot about a lot of different charitable things that he did for people, and
yeah,
as well as the more public ones. And he just seemed like a nice guy. And but again, somebody who wanted people to hear him, and that sort of mixture of vulnerability and performance is always interesting. I think, you know, that's a lot of the my favorite performers, whether it's, you know, something from the jazz world, you know, or whether it's a pop singer like George Michael. It's the sort of the flaws that come through somewhere out of this kind of what seems to be a very beautiful or sort of professional thing on the surface. Those are the things that kind of make it interesting to me.
what about live music then? So I talk a lot and I tell all my listeners too many times that one of my first concerts was Green Day. I was very lucky. I saw them in Wolverhampton when I was about 12. And I wonder what it was like for you. I wondered if you had a really good introduction to live music, or was it an embarrassing one you don't tell anyone, or was it really cool that you can't believe and you're pinching yourself still today?
You know, it's up to the listener to decide. But my first concert, because not many people came around to Middlesbrough, which was my kind of nearest place. Really, I grew up in a small town called Billingham, and I mean, again, as an adult, I now realise there was an amazing folk four-part harmony group called the Wilsons just down the road in Wolviston doing a folk night. Once I got into folk music, but at the time, I was definitely into anything that would come near us as soon as I was able to go to like clubs. And I think I might have been 17 and Shed 7 played at Middlesbrough
Oh,
Arena.
nice.
And so that was my first. There was a whole group of bands that were around at that time who played like Cooler Shaker and played there. I remember seeing them. And one of the, I saw Kaniki and Catatonia.
God, this is taking me back now.
So yeah, this was that was the era, I guess, of sort of Brit poppy stuff. But again, none of the bigger bands, I guess you would say, came to Middlesbrough. They would always go to Newcastle, where I live now. So that was kind of one of the reasons why when I got to university and I chose Newcastle, because I would look at all of the different listings for bands and musicians coming into the Northeast. And I didn't want to be too far away from home, but I did want to see more bands that I liked because, you know, although I enjoyed myself at the Shed 7 concert. I didn't have any of their records,
No.
and it was like, this is what's nearby. I remember Kaniki came, and I really enjoyed that. This sort of, they had this song called Punker, which I thought
Yeah.
would be a lot of fun. And it's funny, obviously, seeing Lauren Laverne doing so well as a broadcaster now. I remember just the excitement of seeing a band who were from Sunderland, not too far away, playing in Middlesbrough and putting on a fun sort of punky rock and roll show. That was, I remember seeing that and being quite inspired.
So did you, while uni, do the whole thing of forming a band and doing that kind of battle of the bands thing and stuff like that, or was your first kind of, was it before that at school that you did a band? I mean, what was your introduction to kind of playing yourself?
Well, I was really quite shy, really. I would have been too embarrassed to play in front of other people. And I listened to a lot of music. I was obsessed with music, and just what I did with, when I was playing my guitar just didn't sound anything like the stuff that I wanted it to. But by the time I got to art college, when I guess I'd just finished A level, so I must have been 18, 19. I met my two friends who are still two of my best friends today, Rachel and Laura Lancaster, who are both visual artists. And we were all doing this art foundation course in Hartlepool. And we sort of went on a night out to a nightclub and confessed that we all played the guitar, and we all liked Radiohead, and we all sort of liked kind of folky music and Sonic Youth. And so one day we agreed to just going into a little rehearsal studio in Hartlepool, which was right out next to the sea in Hartlepool. It's the older part of Hartlepool that I guess not many people would go to unless you had to go there. And there was this old church, and a sort of local cooperative had made a little studio inside and these rehearsal rooms. So we just plugged in to these old, and probably Marshall and Fender, just knackered old amplifiers, and we just made a racket. And just we were into a lot of kind of avant-garde music, and but we also kind of like bands like Mogwai who were coming through at the time. And we went to see Mogwai at the Middlesbrough Corner House. And I remember just they were playing with Arab Strap, I think, at the time. And just again, seeing bands making noise that you really liked, and they didn't seem totally distant and too overly professional. And we went to see them with a band called Ariel M, which was Dave Parho from Slint.
Oh,
And
right.
he was supporting Mogwai, but we were really, again, we loved Mogwai, but we were so impressed by Ariel M, and we kind of delved into more of that kind of post-rock music. And we were into kind of Tortoise and things like that. I've got my Tortoise. I've actually got a Tortoise poster in the background. I'm gonna show you it, even though
Oh,
that's
nice.
podcast listeners will not appreciate this.
Look at that. That's cool.
Anyway, but we loved the idea of just kind of making music with guitars and not having to have a singer with like an ego and not having to think about words, just kind of expressing ourselves. And as we continued to practice together, we just ended up making more melodic stuff. That was the stuff that we ended up playing live when we finally played live. We got a drummer, our friend Nabi, to play with us. And so Maximo Park actually saw me playing with me and the twins. And I was on the same art history course as Tom, our drummer. And he actually had a student radio program, and he said, "Hey, I really like your band, with Rachel and Laura, what are you called?" And I said, I don't know, just call us me and the twins, because because they were identical twins, and they still are. And
Yeah.
so I just wrote that down on a cassette tape and gave it to Tom to play on student radio, on NSR, Newcastle Student Radio. And after that, we ended up playing a few gigs. And the first ever gig that I played properly was supporting Maximo Park, believe it
That's
or not.
so fucked up.
And it still kind of astounds me today that all of these different kind of very vague strands of my life kind of pulled together. And I wasn't a singer or anything like that. That we used to kind of because it was instrumental and we were semi-improvised, I would just do like a big kick to get to the next part of the song. And I would always dress up, and we would have we projected films behind us that we'd made on Super 8
Oh,
camera.
I love this.
Yeah, we just wanted to kind of make music and make art. And the funny thing is, all of those things ended up having Tom come up to me and say, you seem to like putting on a show and kind of, being the sort of front person of this instrumental group. And at the time, his girlfriend, who is now his wife, said, I heard Paul singing the other night in just along to the music in a place called World Headquarters in Newcastle that plays a lot of soul and funk music. And she just heard me singing along while we were playing pool downstairs in this club. And she said, Paul can sing. He was really impressive. I'd had too much to drink, obviously. And he kind of put two and two together and just said, look, my band, we need a front person, we need a singer. Duncan doesn't feel that comfortable doing it. Archer's our old bass player. He didn't feel that comfortable. They were kind of singing their own songs, and so I just that was it really, just a complete chance alignment of things, and I ended up, yeah, it's obviously 20 odd years later, still making music with Maximo Park and still being part of this group of friends who love this music.
Was it challenging for you? Because you did say probably about 10 minutes ago that you were quite shy, quite reserved. You weren't comfortable in your other band wanting to be like the focus. So then when Maximo Park asked you, were you like, oh, that's quite a lot of pressure? As much as I loved singing drunk, playing pool, and someone heard me, it's a difference than fronting a band in front of a room full of people, isn't it?
Oh, it is. I mean, I didn't really know what it was going to sound like, and I just kind of opened my mouth and sang, and it seemed to work. Like, I mean, they gave me a CD full of the songs, and I sort of picked two or three that I thought I might be able to add words to, or write new words, and because they just said, do what you want, keep what you want, write whatever you want. And so some of those songs that were on that first CD they gave to me were on our first album in the end, A Certain Trigger, that came out in 2005. And I think within 18 months of me joining the band and never singing before, we'd signed our record contract with Warp Records. And I think a lot of to go back to your question, I just didn't know what I was doing, and I just did what felt right, and I just went for it. And the sound, when I listen back now, at the sound of me singing on our first record, even though we had done a number of gigs and I'd been in the band a while at that point, it still sounds to me just like somebody just expressing themselves. It sounds quite unrefined, and in some places I'm a bit like, oh, I could have sang that much better than that, and but that's it. I went in with a very sort of clean slate. I hadn't been in other bands where I was singing and trying to be the focus of attention. When I first got into that practice room in their house that was covered in, was a little room with the washing machine and uh, cardboard boxes, egg boxes on the wall to stop the neighbors complaining too much. It was cramped. There was four other people. I only really knew Tom from my art history course, and the other guys, I'd said hello to them. I don't think I'd ever, don't think I'd met Lucas properly, our keyboard player at the time, and it was intimidating. But I think it had just come at a point in my life where I'd finished university, I'd done a master's degree, and yet I was just working in a call center, and I ended up just thinking, why not?
Yeah.
I feel like if it had happened earlier in my life, I might not have had the confidence to do it. And I feel like I'd just got to a point in my life where I did finally have the confidence. And somebody saying to you as well, you can sing, is it gives you that confidence. They obviously believe that I could be, the person to co-write these songs and to front this band. And one of the things that I said when we were kind of meeting up those first few times, I said, we shouldn't play a concert until I'm really ready, until we've got a full set of songs that I believe in. Otherwise, it's not going to go well, and that remains true to this day. The material itself allows
Yeah.
me the that gives me the ability to perform. If that wasn't there, I'd find it a bit, I would find it too much. Or, the way that I perform is all in. It's 100%, and I go to sleep tonight every night after performing, just thinking I gave it my best. I gave everything that I had, and that's all because I love the music. When we first did our first ever performance, it was 3 months maybe after I joined, and we had it in the diary, sort of a month in or whatever, and as something to aim for. But it was, I would go on the bus to their house in Newcastle and write lyrics on the bus and try and just formulate ideas about what the band should be. And I mean, I think I'd done, when I did my master's degree, it was in American cultural history, essentially. And so I'd kind of read up a lot on the birth of popular music and, um, not necessarily in music industry things, just I'd started to think why people were in bands, how they did it, what they did, and the kind of construction of that. And that gave me again another sort of pathway into thinking about being a singer in a band. If this is what I'm going to do, then yeah, I guess I've done a lot of legwork in terms of research. Whether I can do it or not was just a complete shot in the dark. But the idea that, I didn't want to make it. I just wanted to be really good. I didn't want to be the sort of the main person in the room. I just wanted to do the songs justice. And so I think that kind of organic, if you like, sort of thinking about how to be in the band, I think that helped in just putting across the songs, because the songs are kind of about everyday life, but sort of magnified and projected into a sort of larger, more interesting space, if you like, part of a pop song. And also the idea of it being a pop song was kind of something that I pressed home to everybody, because before I joined the band, it was a bit more disparate and sprawling, and there were
Yeah.
different, sort of psychedelic songs, and then there would be a sort of faster one. And I was like, this is how we're going to do it if I'm going to do it, because this is all I can do at the moment. And I'd like to think we've expanded out a bit from there. But yeah, the idea of pop music and pop culture is something that goes back to your first question, the love of
Yeah, of
a pop
course.
song and a great singer. Bob Dylan's a great singer. Again, you hear people saying Bob Dylan can't sing. It's a bit of a worn out kind of argument now, but it's like a voice and a song is still what it comes down to a lot of the time in pop music. A great groove, these kind of simple components, an amazing riff. Um, and we still, those were the things that I felt we could do, and I felt that we had those things if we could find a way of making it click. And it clicked quite early on, and then it was just trying to find that every time we wrote a song. It's like, no, it needs to have that thing, whatever that thing is that we've got.
Were you prepared for the kind of, and I'm not saying it's like an overnight success, but I've been a music fan since I was a kid, and at uni was the time that we talked about the bands we've mentioned today. But I remember you guys coming on the scene, and I put you down as one of the big like NME bands. I'd see you massively in NME, Melody Maker, those sort of things. You know what I mean? Like I got a really good feel that there's like the Libertines, you guys, the Hives. There's all these bands that were kind of came on the scene, and it did feel like you got this huge push to the moon overnight. It did feel like that as a listener, and on the outside, it felt like Maximo Park. Who are they? And then I hear you on adverts or TV shows or soundtracks and stuff. And I remember it did feel like you took to the scene really quickly, but I don't know what it was like on the inside. Maybe it was too fast, but did you get a chance to even digest what was happening around you and like, fuck, this is probably quicker than we anticipated?
Um, no, I mean, everything felt like it went into place exactly. And now I look back and I go, how lucky was that? To even be making the kind of music that we made and still make at a time when it's being played on Radio One
Yeah.
or whatever. When the zeitgeist is embracing the kind of music that you happen to be making. I mean, that doesn't happen very often. If we came out with our first record that everybody seems to still, mention, 3 years later, 4 years later, it wouldn't have had the same impact. And so there is a kind of happenstance about it that I'm just kind of still amazed. Whether it's Tom's girlfriend overhearing me, or was putting our first record out when we did. Those are pivotal kind of moments. But at the time, they just seemed like the next thing that's happening. It's like I remember at the time, Franz Ferdinand getting signed, and I was like, well, we might actually sign a record deal. But they've how many art rock bands are they going to sign? That could
Yeah.
be for us. We may never get a record contract, but on the other hand, maybe we will, because people are actually starting to listen to bands that are a bit unusual and are still wanting to make people dance and rock out. And so, yeah, I mean, I think we were still a fairly unusual band within what was happening. And yet we were accepted. Yes, every day there would be something else where it's like, oh, do you want to be on this TV show? Do you want to do this? Oh, you're going to fly out to America next week and do this and that. And we just kind of took it in our stride because we didn't know any different. And I think sometimes it is very fast and you are kind of worn out, but you're also young enough to deal with it. We were young, both young and old. We were older than a lot of our contemporaries and we'd finished university and we'd had crap jobs.
Yeah.
And again, that gave us a real sort of sense of perspective. Being in Newcastle, we've never left Newcastle as a band. We've always had our rehearsal room here. Me and Dunk have lived here. The sort of, I guess, the main two songwriters in the band since we met. And so you get a little bit of extra time. I think it sort of deprives you of other opportunities where, so and so meets up with so and so down the pub, and it's like, that's the idea of the kind of network of things. And again, it's a very industry kind of thing, whereas we are the weird guys who live in the Northeast, and we've always been happy to be happy with that because it's allowed us to be ourselves, and it feels just, I mean, authentic, and it's
Yeah.
just who we are. So on the other hand, again, you can remain an outsider, which is a good thing, but also people may look down on you and be dismissive of you because they already have kind of prejudices about, what the North is like or whatever. That there's so many things that feed into people's perception of you as a band that I think that side of it is the difficult part of it, and getting your head around that when people are representing you in a way that you feel is inaccurate or not quite hitting the mark. I think at that time that was the thing that we had to deal with. That we can, if you see us live or if you hear a record of ours, a full album, you'll get a better idea of who the band are. But if you just hear a single or you see a video or whatever, just a snippet of something, or you see our name mentioned with lots of other bands, then you're not getting the kind of full picture. And I think, the sort of culture of Enemy was very sort of, I don't know, just like it was a bit like a kind of cartoon, kind of, it was, I mean, that's part one way of doing it in terms of
Yeah.
writing about a scene or about music or any kind of journalism, you're trying to make it interesting. And I think sometimes the personalities or the music suffers within that. And so, yeah, we tried to sort of stay apart, which was kind of easy for us being based up here because nobody took that much notice of us. But we were
No,
still
come to
good.
London. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
I love it, man, and I love the fact that I've seen you live. I've seen you at festivals. I've seen you at your own shows, and I would never have believed that you were a shy person when you first went into the band because you are such a good frontman, such a good showman, and that's what you remember from a performance. As much as I love bands like Tool and Maynard will be hidden, and it's really like Smashing Pumpkins. It's all about just being kind of reserved and not the forefront of the band. When I see Maximo Park, I kind of my focus is on you, and you put on a show and you keep people, you know, um, kind of invested, and I think it blows my mind. I had Enter Shikari on recently, and Rao was the same. He's like, "Oh, I get really nervous. I feel like I've got imposter syndrome and all this." I'm like, "Fucking hell! Like, how do you switch it on when you go on stage and be like, I'm nervous and I'm anxious. I feel really not out of out of place today," and then you suddenly pick up that microphone or guitar, and then you can just switch it on.
It's the songs again.
Yeah,
The songs are the driving force behind who I am on stage, or even how I dress,
yeah,
or whatever. I like that idea of there being a sort of mixture of real, visceral, in your face excitement and connection, but also a kind of a detachment and an acceptance that what you're seeing is not the full picture. It's not entirely real. It is a performance. And that's the sort of tightrope that I'm balancing. And I err on the other side of just giving everything that I've got, but also, yeah, I acknowledge the fact that it's not a natural situation. And sometimes that, when we first started out, when I was thinking of people who I, loved watching as front men or whatever, I was thinking of people like, sort of Brian Ferry, this kind of slightly aloof person, but again, a consummate crooner, and again, that the kind of the surface of things. He was very interested in pop art and was taught by Richard Hamilton at Newcastle University, which was again a kind of inspiration, knowing that all that sort of thing had gone on in the 50s and 60s in Newcastle. And I was going into the same art department every day. And, those kind of things feed into your mind and you go, yes, that's one way of doing it. But again, I'm not that detached. The songs are not as arch or whatever as Roxy Music's, let's say. They are heart on sleeve, and so I would look at, I guess, Iggy Pop or somebody like that, where it's just he comes off the stage and he needs oxygen or whatever.
yeah,
Oh, that like just the raw again to quote the man, the kind of raw power of that is interesting, especially if you align it with something that is a bit more of a performative thing. Like, David Byrne is a good example where he's clearly an awkward customer, and in some respects I am as well. I don't necessarily want to show off in front of people, but I have an idea about what the songs should be, how they should be delivered, and I'm going to do it regardless of whether I look stupid at times or whether it's sort of humorous. Again, like our shows, some people have said, oh, it's kind of like I don't want to be, rude, but I'm kind of at some points I'm kind of laughing at what you're doing, and I'm good.
yeah,
It's meant, like a lot of the songs are funny, whether it's, The Night I Lost My Head or
yeah,
something like that, where I am the joke. But that's life. Sometimes, sometimes you are, and you have to kind of acknowledge it and laugh at yourself and the farce of life, the kind of sometimes things that are very, sorrowful at the time, you can look back at them and frame them in a different way. So I think our songs have always had a kind of wit and sense of humor about them, and also a very just raw emotion about them. And I don't see many bands doing that, which is why I think it's valid to do it. Because if I thought somebody else was doing it, I'd be like, they already do it very well. It's already, there's no point in doing it. So I think that's we sort of occupy an unusual place. And as a front man, yeah, I'm often in a strange, strange place, like neither one thing nor another. But at no point does it, to me, become unengaged. I am trying to engage people. The lyrics, because of their emotional nature and the sort of personal aspects of them, I want to connect with people. I want to say, this is, has this happened to you as well? Do you feel like this? If plenty of songs that I listen to that I love, it reveals something to me that I didn't know that I felt, and or a different perspective on life and love, and I have a kind of romantic view of the world, which is consistently disappointed. How do you deal with that?
yeah,
That there's obviously a political side to a lot of the things that we do, and to me, it's impossible to subtract that from from the personal stuff. They are one and the same. You know, the way that you look at the world informs everything. You know, the experiences that you've had inform everything. You know, I mean, when I was looking at the some of the lyrics for the new album, when I was kind of thinking about learning stuff off Stream of Life, I was thinking, blimey, you know, a lot of these songs are sort of from a, you know, they and maybe I wouldn't have written them if I wasn't from a kind of working class background. You know, this sort of idea of inequality in the world feels very real to me.
Yeah.
And the idea of people not, again, we've touched on it about perhaps being from the Northeast and being slightly out of things, you know, from a, you know, the facts are that the Northeast is one of the most economically deprived areas in the country. Why is that? And what does that lead into? What how does that lead into our songs? If it does at all, you know, and at the same time, you don't want it to be the main thing, but all of the things that you are feed into the songs, whoever you are and whatever kind of music you're making. You know, if you've experienced lots of distressing things in your life, you may want to find a way out of it, create a kind of fantasy world, something that is unreal. And again, that is informed by your experience. So yeah, I mean, the way that I am on stage is me saying these songs are just amazing to me. You know, like I'm amazed that we came up with them. I don't know how we did it, but I like them, and I hope you do too. This is what they're about.
Music and film for me are my life. Obviously, my wife and family are the most important thing. But after that, music and film is my escapism. And however bad the world is going and the politics take over and the news can really destroy you. If you woke up and watched the news every day, you'd just be like, I'm not getting out of bed. But when I go to the cinema and I watch a great film, or I can put an album on with my headphones and listen to it in its entirety and switch off, that's my kind of moment where I really find a release. And I do it with live music as well. And for the last week, I think I've had your album Stream of Life as an advanced copy. And I've found myself really getting lost in the songs. Your Own Worst Enemy as an opener is probably one of the best album openers I've heard in 10 years. It's up there with like Everything in the Right Place by Radiohead, because it just took me on a journey, and I'm listening to it and really breaking it down. I've got nice headphones. I'm proud to spend a lot of money on headphones because it's such an important part. But I was listening to your vocal and the harmonies, and I was thinking if I could pan this and take your vocal out and just have the second vocal on its own and isolate it, like you used to be able to do with like Kurt Cobain's voice on Nevermind, and I've seen Butch Vig do the same. I haven't heard anyone really put as much time into a harmony since someone like Jeff Buckley.
That's a big thing to say.
It is. It's you've really fucking took your time with this and really broke it down and not just done the formula of a simple song. You've really spent the dedication, and the vocals themselves are unbelievable. I think it's one of your best performances on record. And then to hear those other vocals with it, honestly, dude, like you've taken me on a journey for this last week where I was never expecting you to ever take me. And I think I can't wait for people to listen to it because you should be so proud of this album.
Thank you. It's very, very nice to hear you say that.
Yeah.
You know, you spend so much time thinking about the songs, and you don't want to lose the kind of spontaneous edge that they have either. And so it's again, talk about balance a lot. The album title is almost kind of about balance again, just trying to find a balance in life, and sometimes you need to disrupt the balance.
Yeah.
And you know, it's the same with the layers that we put into the music. You know, it has to be layered for us. That's just who we are. You know, we do have very raw elements to what we do, but from day one, there's always been a kind of sonic layering, and you have to be economical with it. We don't want to be excessive. You know, I feel like that's something that defines the band. And you know, at times you can be lean, but you can still add
Yeah.
those extra layers. And I feel like that song is a good example where it doesn't need too much, but if you can elevate it in some way, that's what I've always felt. You know, like when I'm listening to Kate Bush or something like that, I'm listening to it's her harmonizing with herself.
Yeah.
Sometimes we have guest singers, and Gemma from our band now has been on the last two records, and she plays keyboards with us live and a little bit on the record. And I feel like our voices match nicely on the songs that
Beautifully,
she's
yeah.
on. And I think, she's kind of getting, as time's gone on over the last couple of years, she's now getting used to how I sing. And so I will send her the harmonies and say, do this, but if you want to do anything else, that's up to you as well. And a lot of the time she will replicate what I'm doing, but because it's the second voice, you get this extra timbre, I suppose, from the two voices. But I also love that double tracking again at
Yeah.
certain points. It makes sense. At other points, it gets in the way of the song. It gets in the way of the kind of direct expression that you want to get across. But yeah, I mean, I grew up listening to Jeff Buckley and his dad, and singers like that. I can't, I can't, as we were saying earlier, you can't remove yourself from the things that you've heard. You can't be too distant and detached. Again, I love rock music. I love alternative rock. Somebody who's doing it slightly different, whether that's the Breeders or the Pixies. Again, big American bands have always been something that we love. Smashing Pumpkins' Siamese Dream was another kind of big
One of the
record.
greatest albums ever made, yeah.
Yeah, just the kind of sonics of it, and just like, yeah, can we have some of that lushness and you know the dynamics? And I think that's the key with all of the records, and especially as we've gone on and become kind of more used to being in a studio, and we can go in and we could just knock it out. But what's the point? Like you have this incredible tool at your disposal. If people want to see us, even more direct and you know raw, come and see us live, and you'll get it. But yeah, I like that idea of constructing something and crafting something. And again, that goes back to the idea of songcraft. We love songs, and however much extra stuff there is on the record, however many sonic layers there are, it has to serve the song. And if it does, that's the thing that you're searching for. It's the old saying of when is a painting finished, when is a song finished, is kind of a bit easier to discern, but also you could add more. You can always subtract and create more negative space. And that's an interesting, that's one of the reasons that I love being in the studio just as much as I love playing live, because you get to play around with these things and imagine what it might be like, and then do it. And maybe it doesn't come off, maybe you just go back to the start again. And that kind of process that's the creative process is a kind of endless one, and it's always exciting to me to think, is there a harmony that I haven't done before? What and maybe it doesn't need that harmony. Again, at the end, you've got to kind of go through it all and say, even syllable by syllable. That's something that kind of Gil Norton taught us on the second record. He would go through things like syllable by syllable and go, I think you could do that syllable better. And I was like, this is blowing my mind that this man is paying this much attention to what we've done. But it really it stood me in good stead. All of the producers that we've worked with, you try and learn a bit from each of them, and they've all been fantastic in their own way. And I think it's difficult to understand why a lot of bands get worse as they get older, or seem to lose interest. Because to me, I want to learn and get better. I want to apply the things that I've learned and some of the mistakes that you might have made to what you're doing in the future, and not make those mistakes. Which is, I am aware that that's a pretty unrealistic way of going about it, and there is no such thing as perfection. But as I say, I want to get better as a craftsperson. I want to know what I'm doing, but then push it a bit further, rather than just know what I'm doing and go on cruise control. It's like, can we push this? Can we, if we love the last record, this one needs to be as good. And it's not, measuring songs and
No.
comparing albums and stuff is a fruitless task in the end, even though we all like to do it. But there is that element of kind of competing with yourself every time that you go out to do a show, to play, to make a record. If you believe in what you're doing and have that kind of confidence and the sort of questing spirit to find more about yourself, to find out what else you can do, then the records will continue to be interesting, and there's a good chance there'll be good records as well.
Do you think that's why the band has been going almost 20 years and you still got this huge passion and taste for it? Because I had Brandon Boyd from Incubus, I've had Grant Nicholas from Feeder recently, and they've been going, over 2 decades. And I wondered what it was that kept you hungry. But even though I only met you today for the first time, I can tell that you're not going anywhere anytime soon. And you're always wanting to learn from the producers. You're always wanting to expand and evolve as a band. And that's why my favorite bands like Thrice and bands like this evolve, and Paramore, because you hear them never playing it safe and they're always taking it into a new direction and keeping it interesting. And I feel that's the same with you. I feel like 20 years in and you still feel like you're just starting out, you're scraping the surface. There's so much more to learn, and you just want to keep on being inspired.
It's true, and I think I buy sort of two or three records a week, and not always new stuff, kind of archive stuff that I've not heard. I feel like we are on a kind of quest.
Yeah.
One of our songs is called "Questing, Not Coasting," and it could be, that could be a motto for the band. And staying engaged, staying creative, staying excited, staying friends. I mean, we're in our band, we've always just done what we wanted from day one. We were allowed that creative freedom by one of the best independent labels ever, Warp Records. They just said, do what you want and we'll put it out, and we'll try and find a way of reaching the most amount of people, but we trust you. And not every record company said that. They were like, oh yeah, you're great, but we could do this and we could do that. And I'm not saying that we haven't done things that were, where we went down the wrong path, but we made those decisions and ourselves. We continue to have that independent spirit that was fostered in the kind of DIY scene in Newcastle, just putting on your own gigs, designing the posters, just being so into it. And I think, I mean, on a different level, and is more detached from that DIY ethic. But I mean, even this week we've had like 3 or 4 different merch designs and stuff, and we keep going back and tweaking it and saying that's not quite right, this needs to be better. And every aspect of it is important to us, the way that it's presented, the artwork, and it takes a lot out of you, because, and so it should, it's like there's a discipline to it about staying engaged. It is easy to slack
Yeah.
off, especially when you've done well as well. People who the better you do, the more temptation there is to just sit back and enjoy it. And I have a tendency not to be able to do that,
No,
which can be
which
probably
is a
quite
good thing, I
irritating.
think.
Yeah, I think so. I think ultimately aiming for everything to be as good as it can be, even though that might irritate people at times, is not a bad thing. Again, as long as it's done with love. And yeah, I mean, we've always, if somebody wants to make a record outside the band, they'll just do it. And we feel like that's important. If you want to express yourself in a certain way, then do it. Like last year, I put out a record with my friend Rachel Unthank, which was like a folk record. I did it on my own label. It got probably the best reviews of my of my life. And it because it's folk music. We played to a relatively small audience, but to me, it was so worthwhile to do because you know, we felt like the music was really good and wanted people to hear it. And that kind of allows me to come back to Maximo Park feeling refreshed and eager to do more stuff with the band because I've got that out of my system. And I think sometimes people don't get the things out of the system that they need to, and you end up with a very knotted relationship with the music, with your fellow bandmates if you're in a band. Yeah, we've I feel like we've been really consistent, and it's a word that comes up in my head a lot, and I'm aware that consistency is not newsworthy. And so with each record, I'm grateful that we have a fan base, and I'm always trying to reach new people because I think our music has a lot in it that could appeal to lots of different people. It does rock out. It is introspective. It is, you know, lush sonically sometimes. Some, the lyrics can hopefully apply to most people's lives. I feel like, yeah, to me, it just feeds into this idea, this kind of zeal and this kind of preaching quality. I don't want to preach to anybody, but I am almost like that kind of traveling preacher, just saying, check this out, and going out every night and saying, please, have a listen to this. And I mean, if that kind of thing goes away, then I think it must be difficult for people to sustain it, because it's a lot of work and you have to be disciplined, and you have to do that in the face of the fact that what you're doing is not disciplined, and compared to what most other people do, in terms of your average job. We have a job that is, we're lucky to be our own bosses, and it's something that we love doing. So if you've got that opportunity, then you should cherish it and put everything that you've got into it, really, I think.
How exciting is it knowing that in a couple of weeks there's a new album, a big UK tour, some European dates? It must feel like you have quite a bit of time off, get all ready for this release, and then it's suddenly overnight all go, isn't it?
It is. It certainly seems like that to me. And making the record was a sort of very intense period of activity, and then it's back down to preparing it, getting the painstaking things, making sure that the lyrics are all spelled correctly
Yeah.
on the sleeve, and making sure nothing's out of place. But yeah, in terms of especially the kind of physical thing and the journey of being on the road, it's really exciting to me. It's a bit of a wrench to be away from family after the sort of relaxing into being
Yeah.
with your family all the time, and being here in Newcastle, and then it's this all systems go. But I think, like my dad was saying, oh, you're really busy, son. It's brilliant, and as obviously he worked for however many years just in a chemical factory, and he can see that I also enjoy the work. I want to put the work in and feel the benefit. And so yeah, I am looking forward to it. I think it's daunting on paper when I look at it, and it's also daunting to know that your album's going to come out and you have no real control about who listens to it, or whether people play it on the radio or write about it, or put write about it on the internet. Those kind of things are difficult to deal with when you believe that you've made something of genuine quality, because you're desperate for people to hear it. And so it's an interesting time. But I think once we're out on the road in a few weeks, just playing every night, then it gives me a real sense of purpose. I feel like I'm earning my corn, even if it's just not in a monetary way, just I am doing right by the songs. I'm
Yeah,
doing the
yeah,
thing
definitely.
that
Doing them
is my
justice. I think that's
yeah.
important.
Yeah, it's just like it's the thing that I am here to do now, and I need to do it properly and get into it and go all in. And I think that's a challenge in some ways, but in other ways, it's something that I just kind of relish anyway.
It's a lot of dates. When I look at the poster and I see all the dates, I'm like, God,
You're telling me.
he's going to be busy.
Yeah, I'm gonna be fit as a fiddle after this.
Do you still get nervous? Do you look at how we're going to play these songs live? Are they going to transfer from the studio okay? Are we going to do them justice? Are we going to slip them into the set list now and then? Are we going to try and play a lot of the new album to get it promoted, but also keep the fans happy with playing the classics? Do you still
Yeah,
get all those feelings?
I mean, I definitely get those feelings. I mean, I'm not massively nervous because I feel very confident that in what I can do as a singer or as a frontman. I feel like I've done it long enough now to feel the confidence before I go on. Before it used to be something that just kind of clicked in, but now it's like, yeah, I know I can do that. But obviously in the sort of 10 or 15 minutes before you go on stage, the nerves start jangling in a different way, and you just want to get out there and do it. You don't like, you're just kind of hanging around because your main purpose for that day is the gig, and everything has to revolve around that. So I kind of try and distract myself by going to art galleries or reading or going to record shops and or just going for a walk and seeing the local area. And
Yeah.
sometimes I'll kind of mention it on stage and stuff like, we've if you're in Germany, there's a lot of water towers in some of the older cities, and I'll go, hey, nice water tower or whatever in German, and everybody will, laugh, but they'll also know that you are there.
No,
You
yeah, you've took
you
the
are
culture in. You're
engaged.
not just, yeah, just sitting on a tour bus, just bored.
Yeah, so I think it's the idea of kind of connecting with people is exciting to me rather than nerve-wracking. But you do worry about the balance because we've now got eight records under our belt with this new one, and I definitely clearly all bands, if they're worth any salt, if they're worth their salt, will be excited about the new stuff most because it's the freshest thing
Refreshing, isn't it? Yeah.
off the canvas. You want to share it.
It's a new toy to play with, isn't it?
Yeah, and you want people to feel like that in the audience. You want them to be buzzing off it. And I think you can't. We're not Bruce Springsteen. We're not going to play for like 2 or 3 hours.
No.
It doesn't feel like the right thing to do for us. Even though I love the boss.
I don't know how
It's
you get the energy as well. Like, I see Pearl
yeah.
Jam do 3 hours. I'm like, how does Eddie Vedder, who's over 50, do that? Like, how the hell?
Well, this is it. You've got to measure things. I think I've been at a few shows and it's gone on a bit long just because they've got a big back catalogue. And
Yeah,
you've got to curate it just right. We always play stuff off the first record and up to the current one, and up to now we've managed to get at least one in off each record,
that's
and I
cool.
think we'll continue to do that. And yes, it might mean us playing a little bit longer um, than we used to, and that than our audience are used to, but it just feels like you're misrepresenting the band if you don't play something off a certain record. But I think, if we continue to make records, then we will have to have gigs where we don't play something off a certain record, and that's just the way it goes. But the excitement that you get from people who are seeing some of their favorite songs will never pale, so it makes it easy to do. We always rest songs apart from one or maybe like two or three, which we'll always play and always get huge amount of pleasure from. We kind of drop songs for a tour or two and bring them back when it feels right. So yeah, there's always that kind of juggling aspect of it now. Now that we're into our sort of 20th year next year.
Wow. My final question for you today, and I think you'll struggle with this one because I ask it to everyone, and judging by the amount of records you buy, it's going to be an impossible answer. But what I do after we've recorded today and the interview goes live for everyone, I put at the very end a song that you get to choose. So any song in the history of music, not from your own band or anything like that, a song that means a lot to you. But why I asked the question and the answer and the reason is as important as the song title. I wondered what song came to your heart when I asked the question today, why you felt that's the song that came today. And I really can't wait to hear what you're going to choose because your range of music collection must be insane. So I don't know if you're going to surprise me with something completely off the kind of presumptions I had, or you're just going to, I don't know, I'm just really intrigued.
Let's see. It's hmm.
It's not easy, is it?
It's not easy. It's not easy. I mean, you mentioned Pearl Jam, so I almost wanted to pick a Pearl Jam song because when I was again, that was their first album was a formative influence on me, even though that's long in the past. But I won't because that's almost too obvious. Feels like a real sort of
What
mind.
song would it have been? Black or something? Or
Probably I used to
yeah,
listen to that over and over again, and watch the unplugged that my
Oh God,
version
it's amazing.
that my uncle had taped off me because he had MTV. He taped it for me. Um,
When Eddie's kind of laying on his stomach, like flying on the chair. I'm like, oh,
exactly.
fucking amazing.
Again, inspiring, inspiring.
Yeah.
Um, what have I been? I'm just trying to think because I've been unpacking some of my records because I moved house, and I've been listening to what have I been listening to? Hmm. I've been listening to John Fahey, instrumental guitar player, but
Never heard of him.
he's amazing. But I've been listening to like a box set of his early stuff that I bought just before I moved house, and it's been just in storage for 9 months or something. So I've been listening to that, but I couldn't tell you an actual song off that because it's kind of new to me, and they're all instrumental, and I don't know the album. But a song that really means a lot to me. Again, I was listening. I'll pick one from Nina Simone. I
Oh
was listening
wow.
I was listening to Nina Simone the other day, um, and I was listening to a few of her early records, and she does a great version of Randy Newman's "I Think It's Gonna Rain Today," and the combination of Nina Simone's voice and piano playing, which are idiosyncratic and moving, really moving to me. Though combined with Randy Newman's songwriting, which again is idiosyncratic and very moving, especially this was on his first record, I think. It's just it's a really interesting song. And in the middle, as well as it being a brilliant song generally, there's a kind of middle eight sort of twist where I don't know whether it's a key change. I'm not musically literate enough to describe it, but in the middle there's a kind of turn in it. So that's worth waiting for. And it always surprises me, even though I know it's coming. But it's a beautiful song by an incredible artist.
Wow, I'm really excited to listen. And looking at your dates here, I'll make sure I come in. I think I might come to Birmingham or Manchester. I'm in Shropshire, so I'm bang in the
Oh yeah.
middle. So I'm looking at the venues, and they look great venues, really, really special. So I'll come and say hello and come and see these songs live. I'm really, really intrigued how the new album's going to work live. So I'll make sure I
Please
come
do.
and see you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time today. It means a lot, and I am at the stage now where and I'm not saying this in an arrogant way. I can choose my guests, so I get options to interview people, and also turn down because obviously you get hundreds and hundreds of AR and
Well, yeah.
PR people asking you. And it was an absolute honor when I saw the email coming through from Jay, and I thought to myself, I would love to speak to you, and I feel like we could just scratch the surface today. I'm like, we're an hour in. I'm like, God, I could easily do another couple more hours. But I mean every word I say. I say to bands sometimes that album wasn't the greatest, or I can see what you're trying to do, but I prefer the other bits. But I'm not just saying this because it's fresh. I think your new album is, for me personally, some of your best ever work, and the production, the quality of the recording. And I know obviously you've used an award-winning producer, why, but it sounds fucking gorgeous. Like it's
Thanks.
really special, man. I'm really, really hoping the world all fall in love with it.
Hope so. Hope so. That's my hope. Cheers, Mark. See you later.
So there it is. There's my interview with me and Paul from Maxïmo Park. What a great guy. What a great interview. An hour. We got really deep. We talked about so many topics, so much about songwriting, and just an absolute pleasure to interview from start to finish. I'm really looking forward to seeing the band on their UK tour, and if you're listening to this now and haven't checked out the band's brand new album, please go and do this now. It's out literally this week. It's called Stream of Life and it's going to blow you away. Every track is brilliant. Every song could be a single, and I'm falling in love with it more and more every time I listen. If you've enjoyed today's episode and you're a fan of Maxïmo Park or just a fan of music, why not take the time to share this episode? It's so simple to do. All you have to do is go on TikTok, Facebook, Twitter or Instagram and hit the share button when you see the post advertising this episode. I also do have a Patreon account, so if you want to go that little bit extra, For £2 or £3 a month, you can sign up, and basically that money goes into a pot and allows me to go out there and do more interviews for you guys at home. Also, it allows me to host the podcast on stuff like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music. It costs a lot of money, and that amount of bandwidth each month seriously adds up. And it also just means that I can get you guys more and more episodes. So that for me is a win-win. So if you want to get involved, there's a link on markandme.com, and it takes about 2 minutes to sign up, and it will really help this podcast go further and further. Also, I want to give a shout out to the sponsor of the podcast, Richer Sounds. Without those guys, I couldn't keep this podcast going. If you're in the market for a brand new TV or home cinema surround sound system or Sonos or record deck, just go on richersounds.com or visit any of their high street stores. Right, I'll be back in a couple of days' time with another brand new episode. So until then, look after yourself, listen to Maxïmo Park, and I'll speak to you all very soon.
Broken windows and empty hallways, a pale dead moon in a sky streaked with gray. Human kindness is overflowing, and I think it's gonna rain today. Scarecrows dressed in the latest styles, with frozen faces to keep love away. Human kindness is overflowing, and I think it's gonna rain today. Lonely. Tin can at my feet, I think I'll kick it down the street. Tin can at my feet, I think I'll kick it down the street. Why not? That's a way to treat a friend. Right before me, the signs implore me, help the needy and show them the way.